Hello, everyone. Welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host, Liam, aka Himvar, and today I'll be doing my weekly update. This is Liam's Leapings number 46 for the 8th of July, 2023. So it was a pretty eventful week for me. I actually read a decent amount, but it was also the 4th of July, so we had a holiday kind of in the middle of the week there, which is always kind of disorienting but enjoyable. So this week, I read some short stories. I didn't really write much at all, sadly. I am going to a writing conference tomorrow, Writers Cantina, um, and so I'll be there for that. It's the first year they're hosting it. It's not very big, um, but I'm going to go over real quick the stuff that I read digitally so I don't forget it, and then I'll look at the stack of books I have over here. So I read some of the Weave in the Void, book 1 by T.W. Anderson. Um, I'm slowly making my way through that one. The release, I believe, will probably be sometime in August, so I'm just kind of taking my time since I already read it as well in serial format. And then I read Palace. I finished Palace by Lisa Kuznak. It's a very interesting story. Not my favorite, but definitely not bad. I think some of you might find it interesting. It's like sci-fi horror type of thing. It's pretty short as well. I'll have a review up for that hopefully this Tuesday, because I generally, when I get like an arc, um, or I'm just given a book for free for whatever reason, I like to get that review up as soon as I can, essentially. And Tuesday is like my extra day because I already have reviews planned for Monday and Friday normally, and so Tuesday is like a day I don't normally put a video out. So, and then I also read The Hand of Oberon and The Courts of Chaos, so books 4 and 5 of the Chronicles of Amber. For those unaware, the Chronicles of Amber is 10 books, but it's divided into 2 cycles, the Corwin cycle and the Merlin cycle. So I finished the first cycle. I started this, I believe, in November or December of 2021. I really enjoyed Nine Princes in Amber, but it was about a year ago I read The Sign of the Unicorn. And then the reason I didn't finish or continue is because at the time I had ordered The Hand of Oberon, and I got the wrong book when I ordered it. So that kind of just stopped me from continuing at the point. So I listened to these on audiobook, and that finally got me to finish the series. So it was enjoyable. I'm looking forward to the Merlin cycle. Generally, from what I hear, that it's considered not as good as the Corwin cycle, but I enjoyed this one. You could really read this Corwin cycle as one big book. Heck, you could probably read all 10 books as one big book. They're pretty short, and by today's standards, they're exceptionally short. So, excuse me. I did really enjoy them. I think I enjoyed The Hand of Oberon probably a little bit more than The Courts of Chaos. It's kind of hard to tell. I really like The Guns of Avalon and Nine Princes in Amber as well. The Sign of the Unicorn was pretty cool for what it did as well. So I really liked all these books. I didn't think they were like amazing by any means, but I am looking forward to reading more by Zelazny. Probably Road Marks next, but maybe Jack of Shadows. I have both of those, so we'll see. Maybe Lord of Light, but probably not that one next. I have that as well, and probably not the next, cycle, the Merlin cycle. So, anyways, I read those. So that's 3 books I finished so far digitally that I have, and then I read. Let's see, what else did I read digitally? Oh, and then I read The Doom That Came to Sarnath by H.P. Lovecraft online. Pretty short story. It's fantasy. It's not sword and sorcery because there's no protagonist really. It's just like a tale of a city, essentially, Sarnath, right? It's about how I expected it to go, but it was good. It was enjoyable, and I did have a fun time with it. If you haven't read it, maybe check it out. It's H.P. Lovecraft. Now we can get to stuff. I have the books I actually got this week on top. So the first book I got this week is a new antique book, actually, and it is in really good shape compared to most of my antique books, and it just looks really nice. This is by Charles Kingsley, Hereward the Wake. I know this was originally published in 2 volumes. I believe this is a 1-volume edition, but I'm not entirely sure. This is from the early 20th century. This volume, the book itself, is from the 19th century. And it is about Hereward, right? So Hereward is, how to describe him? He's an outlaw, essentially, who resisted Norman rule um, shortly after the Normans conquered England. So he's an Anglo-Saxon, I guess, if you would. Uh, It's hard to say. It's hard to say that because the Anglo-Saxons, they really called themselves English, but at the time the Normans are the English now at that point. So he's the older English. He's the English speaking English, while the Normans would have been speaking French, of course. So and they were recently conquered. So Hereward, he's kind of a figure that's not really well known. Like Robin Hood, for example, and probably maybe Thomas the Rhymer, which reminds me I need to read Greg Cross's Rhymer, which just came out from Bain. And I have a digital copy, and I just need to read it. But not really Hereward the Wake. In fact, I don't know if I can think of any like novelization of him. I can think of like historical books you could read about him. I'm not entirely sure what this one is, to be completely honest. I'm not entirely sure if this is more of like a novelization of the character or if it's more of just a historiography of him or something. But there's the way it looks just by glancing through it, there's like quotation marks in like conversations going on. It looks like it's kind of like a novelization. So Kingsley was a terrible racist, like very bad. It kind of makes sense why you'd idealize someone like Hereward the Wake. But he was particularly bad towards the Irish. In fact, he called them white chimpanzees at one time. So definitely not a character that you look up to historically, right? I know that would drive some people away from reading his works. I'm still interested in reading this, and again, this is a beautiful copy. So, got to get that into the antique book collection in my closet. And then I also got a copy of Bird and the Bear by Gregory Amato. Thank you, Greg. He sent this to me. I recently reviewed this, so you can go watch my review. I also got this cool bookmark and the postcard. Isn't that awesome? I think that's awesome. So I enjoyed this one. It's about 400 pages, and I'm looking forward to reading the next two books in the trilogy. So glad to finally get this one though. So it's technically an arc because I think it technically comes out in August, but I read the digital arc before this arrived. So yeah, Bird and the Bear, very fun, Viking, very comic novel. So, and then now we can get to the stuff that I have physically over here. All right, so I finished Elven Star. I mentioned this last week. It's by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. I was almost done with this on my last weekly update. So I finished this. This is book 2 in the Deathgate cycle. I'm going to start book 3 actually here tomorrow, hopefully. So, yeah. So this is fun. It's not amazing by any means. In fact, I'm kind of feeling the same about this one as I did with the first one, which is to say they're good, but I wasn't blown away and I wasn't immediately interested in reading the next ones. But I have them feeling rather impoverished right now, so I'm trying to read stuff I have and not buy much. So yes, Elven Star, book 2. I'm glad to finally be making more progress because reading book 1 of 7 didn't make me feel like I was very far. So, anyways, and then speaking of a similar thing, I read Wizardborn by David Farland. If you remember last week, I had finished, oh my goodness, Brotherhood of the Wolf, which is book 2 in the Rune Lords, and this is book 3. I really enjoyed this one. It's not as good as Brotherhood of the Wolf. It's slightly shorter as well, and I believe book 4 is even shorter than this. So it's one of those fantasy series, which I always appreciate. Not actually terribly long books. They're not small, but they're like pretty standard by epic fantasy, which is what thing I really appreciate about it. Actually, it's better than Wheel of Time. I can just restate that. We got this cool giants here on the cover. So, anyways, I'm enjoying this series. I would like to get to, I think the Lair of Bones is book 4, sooner rather than later. I have it as well. So, yeah, and then I read some of The Leaves of Laughter's End by Stephen Erickson. Finally getting back to Stephen Erickson. I'm hoping to start The Bone Hunter soon. I obviously mentioned a lot of books I want to start soon. So hopefully I'll get to The Bone Hunter soon. I have, for those who like Malazim, I have my review for House of Chains coming out near the end of July and on Monday, and followed by on Tuesday or Friday, my review for Midnight Tides. and then followed by my review for Night of Knives and Night of the Long Knives, which is not a Malazan book. But the reason I did that is my Night of the Long Knives was my next book to review, and I was like, oh, I wanted this book to come out the same day as Night of Knives, which I thought would be funny. But I was like, I can't review Night of Knives if I haven't read House of Chains or reviewed House of Chains and Midnight Tides. So I pushed those up, push all those Malazan books up, and they would have come out pretty close to each other anyways, but they would not have come out one after the other, and they would have been probably in August at some point. But now they're going to come out in late July. So, I'm getting the Leaves of Laughter's in, which is book 3, Book and Cobra Brooch of Malazan stuff. I'm not very far in. It's not very long though. Hopefully, I'll finish this week. I kind of just put it on the side. So, to be completely honest, because I finished 5 books this week, and I like having I need 4 for my thumbnail, right? So I like having finished 4 and not having to repeat myself generally, right? Just use perfectly in an ideal world, I'd finish 4 books per week, and each week the thumbnail would be the 4 books I finished and not be a carryover from the week before that or carry over into the next week, right? And so I read 5 this week, and I was like, I could finish this, but that would make 6, and then I wouldn't be able to use it probably, at another point. So, and then I might not read. If I finish this and read 6 in 1 week, and a lot of them are rather short, right? Which is why I'm able to do that. I wouldn't be able to. Maybe I'd only read 3 the next week, so then I have to reuse something, and then I don't want to do that. So, but I did read another story from this collection, Fated in Sericamon, by Arthur Gilchrist Broder. It's been several months since I've read one of these. I am about or almost 200 pages in now. I read the story Red Knight, Night, not like Knight, but very, very, very fun. It is Pierre Fadet finally has made his way to another place. They start in like Toulouse, essentially. They've gone into Moorish Spain. Now we're in Normandy during the Anarchy, so it's super fun. Honestly, I think we're gonna get to the Holy Land at some point. I don't think we've gotten to the Holy Land here yet. I'm really enjoying this though. It was a very fun story. It's not quite sword and sorcery. It's more against adventure, historical fiction, typical of the pulps at the time, but it's very fun. I really enjoyed it. So that's basically what I read this week. I think. Let me double check. Yeah, that is it. So I will be out of town all day tomorrow. Basically, I'm going to leave early in the morning and then drive back or starting around dinner time. So I can wake up in my bed and go to sleep in my bed, but I'll be out of town. I'll be out of state even for a good chunk of that. So we'll see what I can get read this next week. See if I can get any. I did submit a story or 2, I think, this week. There's always my Patreon as well. I put out I try to put out stuff pretty consistently. The last thing was actually a script, like for a movie type thing. Very short, it's only like 10 pages. I think it's very fun. A lot of people might not care for it, but I thought it was very fun. It's like instead of Northanger Abbey being like kind of a satire on the Gothic novel, I made it a sci-fi, far future sci-fi that is a satire on realism, especially Austen's form of realism, which I don't really like all that much because it's not very realistic. So, anyways, which reminds me because I also read recently, is it Henry? Whatever, Ibsen's A Dollhouse or The Doll's House, or however people translate it, which is a very different form of realism compared to someone like Austen. That's a play, and that was very interesting. Not sure I enjoyed it so much, but it was definitely something that made me think. And if you've watched or read A Dollhouse or The Dollhouse, you probably know what I'm talking about. But anyways, but thanks for all the support. If I do actually ever get to 1,000 subscribers, which honestly, I don't know if that'll ever happen. If I do, though, I can likely do a Q&A. I know that's a pretty popular thing. I've never done anything like that. I don't know if anyone would be interested in hearing any of my thoughts. I'm like at this rate, like I'm hardly ever on anyone else's channel. So, and I grow so slowly because I don't do anything that like anyone finds interesting. I'm just here doing my own thing, which is cool. That's the way I like it. So, anyways, this one, Liam from Liam's Lyceum. What have y'all been up to this week? I will catch you next time though.